Caution. The AJ and Quill show contains D&D content and is intended for a D&D audience. And, besides that, they're really weird.
Hi everyone, welcome to Total Party Quill. I'm your friendly neighborhood tiefling, Professor AJ, and with me as always is my fearless companion, Quill the Dragon. Say hi, Quill.
Greetings, puny humans. Prepare to absorb the knowledge Quill will dispense with his mighty jaws.
And this is your one-stop for monster tactics in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
So what are we covering today?
Now, if you ever wanted to see a monster that was faster than the babysitter's boyfriend when your car pulls up, this is it.
Today we're covering quicklings.
Right, and I love monsters whose name describes exactly what they do.
But let's not waste any more time.
Right, let's see what the monster stats are. Now, a Quickling is a CR1 tiny chaotic evil fae that's found on page 187 of Volo's Guide to Monsters.
They have an impressive AC of 16.
Right, and this is mostly due entirely to their dexterity, which is crazy high. They have 3d4 hit dice, an insane speed of 120 feet. They also have proficiency in acrobatics, perception, sleight of hand, and stealth. They can speak Common and Sylvan.
And they get a blurred movement and evasion traits.
And they have a multi-attack where they can attack 3 times with their daggers.
But let's see what the book actually has to say about them.
Now, Quicklings rocket through haunting, twisted forests, where the unseelie fae hold sway, both in the Feywild and in the material world. Racing faster than the eye can track, each appears to be little more than a blurry wavering in the air. Now, a Quickling is a small, slender fae similar to a miniature elf with sharp, feral features.
Its cold and cruel eyes gleam like jewels.
Now, Quicklings live fast and die young. Quicklings owe their existence to the plight of the Queen of Air and Darkness, the dread ruler of the Gloaming Court and the Unseelie Fae. Now, they were once a race of lazy and egotistical fae. The creatures that would become the Quicklings were late in answering the Queen of Air and Darkness's summons one too many times. Now, to hasten their pace and to teach them to mind her will, the Queen shrank their stature and sped up their internal clocks. The Queen's curse gave Quicklings their amazing speed,
but it also accelerated their passage through life. No Quickling lives longer than 15 years.
And that's very important. You need to remember that because it's going to come up later. Now, too fast for words. The mortal realm is a ponderous place to a Quickling's eye. A hurricane gradually creeps across the sky. A torrent of rain defts earthward like lazy snowflakes. Lightning crawls as a meandering path from cloud to cloud. The slow and boring world seems to be populated by tepid creatures whose deep, mooing speech lacks any meaning. Now, to other creatures, Quicklings seem blindingly fast, vanishing into an indistinct blur as it moves. Its cruel laughter a burst of rapid staccato sounds. Its speech a shrill squeal. Now, only when a Quickling deliberately slows down.
Which, honestly, they prefer not to do.
Right, but once they do, other creatures and beings can properly see, hear, and comprehend them. Now, Quicklings never really rest. Even a stationary Quickling will constantly pace and shift its place back and forth as though it can't wait to be off again. Now, if you look at the monster stats with regards to what this just said, they don't actually represent the Quickling's speed very well.
120 feet of movement is really only 22 kilometers per hour.
Right, that's 13.5 miles per hour for all of our American viewers down south.
Even if they dash, that's only 44 kilometers per hour.
Right, and even Olympic runner Usain Bolt was clocked at around 45 kilometers per hour.
Now this seems to have been done in-game to make for ease of combat.
Right, but if you want something that feels a little bit closer to their actual speed, then you might want to consider giving them dash as a bonus action, like we did in this homebrew.
Mischief, not murder.
Now, Quicklings have a capricious nature that goes well with their energy level. They think as fast as they can run, and they are always up to something. Now, a Quickling spends most of its time perpetrating acts of mischief on the slower creatures. One rarely passes up an opportunity to say, tie a person's bootlaces together, to move a stool out from underneath a creature that's about to sit on it, or to unbuckle a saddle while no one's looking. But tricks of this sort are hardly the limit to the Quickling's malice.
They don't commit outright murder, but quicklings can ruin lives in plenty of other ways.
Right, they could steal an important letter, they could swipe coins collected from the poor, planting a stolen item on someone's bag. They have lots of options.
Quicklings enjoy causing suffering that transcends mere mischief, especially when the blame for their actions falls on other creatures and creates discord.
Now that's really cool. Quicklings are interesting, they're fun, little mischievous creatures.
Evil little fae set to cause pranks.
Right, but let's look at what the book isn't telling you. Now, Quicklings were created by Lauren Scheck for the second Monster Manual in first edition. Now, the thing is, Quicklings aren't actually a race all unto themselves. They're actually a sub-race of brownie.
I love brownies. They're even better with marshmallows on top.
No, wait, they're not those brownies.
What?
Right, it's a different kind of brownie. Now, brownies are actually kind of like halflings, but magical Feywild halflings.
Brownies were possibly the template for halflings that were created on the material plane. Now, brownies are quite shy, but they like to help out good creatures.
Right, and they'll do this by living in someone's house, secretly, and then mending things or helping things or finding lost items. Simple stuff like that.
In keeping with their shyness, they like to operate at night and out of direct view.
Right, they like to do nice things for good people, and they like to leave little gifts.
However, they can quickly become offended, say if anyone were to call these gifts a payment.
Right, or, importantly, if you were to ever offer a brownie an article of clothing as a gift, they would see it as an insult.
Now, if this sounds familiar, you might realize that Dobby the house elf from Harry Potter really isn't that original of an idea.
Right, but as far as brownies go, Dobby the house elf actually isn't that bad of a template.
Brownies are, however, known to steal or take things.
Right, but that's really only things that they find it hard to make for themselves, like cheese and bread and butter, stuff like that.
Now, while they're related, quicklings aren't much like brownies at all.
Brownies are generally helpful and kind of nice, whereas quicklings are total jerks. Now, quicklings are said to have sought out dark and magical powers. Now, maybe they went and sought out these powers from the idea of doing good.
But that's not what happened.
Now, some stories say that they tried to master these powers and they were just too much for them. Others say that they were being punished by an archfey for trying to steal a book. It could even be a combination of any of these.
The 5th edition story is quite fitting too. Many times in the lore, it's said that the Queen of Air and Darkness is responsible for their transformation.
Right, so take your pick. Now, we've talked about the Queen of Air and Darkness, but who is she really?
The Queen of Air and Darkness is an archfey and sister to the Queen of the Summer Court, Titania.
Or is it Titania? We're not sure how to say this.
Anyway, she was the fey deity of illusion magic, darkness, and murder.
Now, her long-lost true name is never spoken of by the Fae.
It's Mab.
And her symbol was a black diamond, similar to Oral in the Forgotten Realms. Now, the Queen of Air and Darkness is a bodiless, invisible being, but she can be perceived magically as a fairy with pale, angular features and a mane of black hair.
She's beautiful, but it's a terrible, eldritch beauty that chills you to the bone.
And she hates Titania and her Seelie court.
She opposes them directly with her own unseelie court.
And because she's basically a representation of the corruption that can take place in the hearts of elves, the elvish pantheon generally also considers her an enemy.
The Queen of Air and Darkness's unseelie court used to be on the plane of Pandemonium. Now this may change with the new lore, though it could just be said it's a different domain of the light inside the Feywild.
Now, the Queen of Air and Darkness's court is filled by evil, twisted fae and elves, undead, yethhounds, unseelie sprites, and quicklings.
She is often blamed for the creation of every evil fae race, including quicklings and spriggans.
Now, quicklings first appeared in the second Monster Manual in first edition. They're usually described as small and slender, with proportions similar to an elf's.
But their features are much more virile, and they have blue skin and white hair.
Now, in 4th edition, there was a visual redesign of this creature. They were a lot more feral and evil-looking with sharp teeth and weird eyes.
But don't discount this artwork. These types of quicklings could easily be explained as quicklings from the Fey Dark who are in service to the Formorians.
Right, they could have been corrupted by the Underdark Fey energies.
Or it could be from simply being in close proximity to an evil Archfey.
Right, or they could have been in service to like an evil hag that warped their features.
Now quicklings don't live long, and are considered adults by the age of 2.
And quicklings choose to live in places that are both dark and evil. Hence the dark vision.
They like to live in Fey swamps, bleak and broken badlands, and dark, infested forests.
Right, and more to the point, they're certainly fast enough to be able to avoid all the dangers that live in these kinds of places.
Ultimately, though, quicklings love the solitude.
Right, this is important to know about quicklings. They absolutely hate being reminded of their own mortality.
Their lifespans are so short when compared to that of the slow folk.
Right, and quicklings actually feel kind of this perverse pleasure that they derive from any misfortune that would befall one of the slow folk.
Especially when it's against those lofty, arrogant elves.
Right, in their view, elves would be, say, the longest lived of the slow folk and the ones who are shoving that fact the most in their faces. So in combat, quicklings are actually more likely to attack elves first.
Now from their poisoned and twisted lairs, quicklings hunt down the slow folk and have deadly sport with them.
Now quicklings in general are unpredictable. They're easily bored and they're highly distractible.
Quicklings in general are unreliable allies, but deadly enemies.
Now something that's not covered in the lore in Volos is that quicklings are actually considered adept ventriloquists.
They throw their voices to fool other creatures into traps or dangerous situations.
Right, like they might pretend to be somebody who's in pain or who's suffering and actually lead creatures into a monster ambush.
Stuff like that.
But if you look at their 5th edition stats, they have a terrible charisma and no proficiency in deception.
But they do have proficiency in stealth. This could be hilarious to play out as the quicklings try to deceive the players from hiding into some kind of trap.
Right, it wouldn't be hard to determine that this is actually some kind of deception, but all you would hear is this high-pitched voice trying to get you to do something ridiculous.
That is, until they're found out.
Now, something funny with quicklings, because of the blue color and their speed, they remind me a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog. So in my games, if you ever strike a quickling, it falls down and a whole bunch of gold rings tend to fall out of its pockets.
Also not covered is how much quicklings can eat.
Right, a quickling's appetite can outpace that even of a full-grown horse.
Kind of like how the Flash has to eat constantly because he runs so much.
Right, but, as a note, a quickling can survive at a bare minimum of twice the amount of food a medium-sized humanoid would need in a day.
Quicklings are hilarious and fun little creatures, but let's cover their combat tactics.
Right, let's put it all together. How do quicklings behave in combat? Now, quicklings are described as capricious and malicious, but the flavor text inside of Volo's guide says that they aren't straight-up killers.
They don't kill just for the sake of killing.
Right, they like to cause misfortune to the slow folk.
Slow folk is anybody that's not as fast as a quickling.
Right, but if they kill the creature, they can't watch them suffer from that misfortune.
Instead, quicklings are much more likely to initiate wickedly evil pranks.
Right, and this is where that stealth proficiency is going to come in. More than likely, a quickling will trail a set of adventurers, hiding the whole time, and then run in, perform some kind of prank, and then leave.
Once discovered, quicklings will run for the hills, laughing their high-pitched laugh the whole way.
They're not super powerful. It's a CR1 creature, and more than likely, they're going to try to avoid a fight, if at all possible.
Now, quicklings are quite hard to hit. Between their high armor class and their blurred movement feature.
Right, which imposes disadvantage on attacks against them unless they're incapacitated or restrained.
This disadvantage essentially gives them the mathematical equivalent of an AC of 21.
Which is crazy. Now, basically, this is all from their high dex. They're just really hard to hit because they're so fast.
This means that even if you surround or corner a quickling, they won't stay that way long.
Now, if you're going to try to fight a quickling, you're better off using things that require the quickling to make saving throws.
Just not dexterity saving throws.
I mean, you could also try grappling them, but their acrobatics is so high that they're probably just going to get out of it immediately. Now, when we look at their stats, a quickling's primary offensive ability is its dexterity.
And its primary defensive ability is dexterity.
Right, this means that they try to avoid damage instead of absorbing it.
This gives them the profile of a hit-and-run fighter.
Now, their dagger does have a range on it of 20 feet, but I honestly don't see a quickling carrying more than one or two of these things, so it's not likely to throw its weapons in the middle of combat, unless its next move is to completely run away.
For tactics in combat, a quickling will stay about half its movement speed away from the front line of combat.
Right, that's about 60 feet away, which is huge!
On its turn, it will run in and engage in fight with an opponent.
Now, when it does this, it's either going to prioritize any elf or some spellcaster that's forcing it to make a saving throw, but not a dexterity saving throw.
They will then use their multi-attack to hit them 3 times, then run away using the other half of its movement speed.
Right, these creatures are the ultimate hit-and-run fighters. Now, that's because they can stay 60 feet of movement away. Most characters only have 30 feet of movement, so they would have to dash just to be able to get up to the creature.
Denied.
Once they do that, they won't have anything left to attack them on that turn.
Now, basically, it's rinse and repeat these tactics.
However, quicklings do very much value their own lives.
Right, having their own mortality shoved back in their faces is the very reason that quicklings hate the slowfolk to start with. Because of this, we do say that once a quickling is reduced to 1/4 of its total hit points, it's going to suffer a morale failure and flee combat.
It does this by taking the dash action on its turn, then disappearing faster than an ice cream cone in hell.
And that's pretty much it. That's everything you're going to need to know to get started using quicklings inside any Dungeons & Dragons adventure.
Especially in the upcoming Wild Beyond the Witchlight.
Now, quicklings are interesting, fun little mischievous creatures.
They're a great way to play pranks on your party.
And a great tool to cause chaos.
We hope you have fun using them.
Right, so until next time, have a good one. We hope you're staying safe out there. Get vaccinated, try to love everybody, and... Is it time for school yet?
Bye!
Yeah, 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 yeah.